Welcome. This is O90 here, and today I am introducing to you the Wendigo of the South Part 2. If you haven't seen Part 1 yet, I would suggest checking it out. It's something. So, I actually tried getting this out early. I was using my other candle, and, I'm sure you just saw the little thing I did there with lighting it up as soon as the video started. I tried getting that done, except there's a little error. I posted it on X. Little error where I may have forgotten that melted wax exists. There's a lot of melted wax in the candle. Tried lighting it. Got all over my fingers. Hot wax, by the way. All over my fingers. All over my my beautiful typewriter here. So that was fun. So they kind of forced me to stay on schedule. if you know, I still haven't gotten all the wax off, but it's a work in progress. You know, always a work in progress anymore. So if you haven't seen Part 1 yet, I would suggest checking it out. Don't remember if I really already said that, but I don't really give too much of a shit anyway, so I'll go with it. So in Part 1, we followed as Jake, Mike, and hang on, I realized I didn't put this well enough. Jake, Mike, and Alan, Alan's her dad, started going on their road trip from Albuquerque to Carlston. And Jake had a spooky nightmare, and I kind of left a little cliffhanger talking about how it might tie into what happens later. Big fucking surprise, am I right? Spooky dream predict spooky events. How original. But, this is more of a, special story, so... Special in more ways than one, I should say. This is dragging off... I don't know how to talk, apparently. I apologize. This is dragging on too long, so let's just get into it. This is, very interesting story so far. I cannot wait to write Part 3, and yes, I am waiting until this is done before I write Part 3. Kind of like to go along with it as the viewer does. Anyway, so just get into it now. October 23rd, 2011. It's been 10 days since the family moved in with Jim. And in those 10 days, things have settled down a bit. Alan was able to find a job that didn't require too much mobility. Filing, mostly. Jake and Mike weren't enrolled in the local Carlston Middle School, instead homeschooled by their grandpa Jim. After Jake and Mike finished a lesson in division, Jake went outside. While outside, Jake saw the old house, the one Grandpa had always told him to stay away from. And he is yet again reminded of the horror story that had been ingrained into his memory. He remembers the dream he had back on the drive here. Had a monstrous wolf thing had clamped its jaws onto his head, his entire head. He ignored it, but hearing talk around town about this carnage or wolf Wendigo, it really reminds him of whatever was in his dream. Just then, Grandpa saw Jake staring at the house, and before he could pretend like he wasn't looking, his grandpa was already sitting next to him. And he asked, "I ever tell you about the story behind that place?" And Jake had, in fact, heard the story tons of times, actually. And so that's what he told him. He had heard it. It's been a while, but he remembers it vividly. But based on the smirk on Jim's lips, Jake knew he was hearing it again. And here's the story behind the house in the woods that Jim would tell his grandson. Over 50 years ago now, a family lived in that home. The Williamson family. They seemed to be an ordinary enough family unit. A father, a mother, and their 4-year-old son. The house has been there since Carlston was founded, as the Williamsons were one of the founding families of the town. But in 1954, things took a dark turn. Suddenly, across all of Carlston, and even other parts of New Mexico, many people started going missing, and worse still, a couple of them turned up mangled. Half of people's bodies were found torn apart, as if some wild, horrible creature had ripped the victim to shreds with knives for claws. Whatever or whoever this was dubbed the Carlston Reaper, and the name spread like wildfire. But one day, in late November, a detective made a connection. Several victims in Carlston had been at Lenny's, a local bar, and all of them, the night before they went missing, were with one man, Wilson Williamson, the father and husband of the Williamson household, and so he became a suspect. And when police went to get his alibi for the latest murder, they were met with a deranged lunatic who attacked them. He ended up being shot, and police raided the Williamson household, which had been made a house of horrors, for lack of better terms. Jim remembers his mother reading the newspapers, how they detailed the organs in the freezer, the skulls carved in the goblets, the pile of decomposing flesh in the trash, the body parts half scraped off of plates in the kitchen counter. Mirabelle Williamson, Wilson's wife, was found, and she had ended her own life, and recently. After further searches, their 4-year-old, Josiah, was found alive and quickly taken from the premises. Jake was disturbed by the story, reasonably so, more so knowing what would happen later on in the 70s. But Grandpa didn't really bother to tell that part, and Jake really wanted to get on with the rest of his day, and he didn't really want to hear that whole charade again, so he neglected to remind him to rehearse the rest. Jake would go out in the backyard, and Mike decided to join him. There they played with their grandfather's dog, Mitzi. Jake had brought a drink out, a Gatorade, and when he went to play with Mitzi, he looked for somewhere to set it down. His eyes landed on a small gap in the fence, just barely big enough to fit the Gatorade. After it was placed, Jake went right to Mitzi. About 15 minutes later, a particularly strong gust of wind knocked the Gatorade to the ground. Jake was preoccupied with Mitzi, and Mike saw, and naturally picked it up and placed it back in the small gap in the fence. Now, to understand the rest, you need to have a good mental image of what's on the other side of said fence. On the other side is a small hill about 10 feet out, a couple of trees dotting the area, with a partial about 15 feet away from the fence is a tree line, and there's also a partial view of the abandoned house in said tree line. Tree line, not lime. It's a very slim, very out to the right, but it's still there if you look closely. Jake placed the Gatorade, and then he looked back, but he didn't pause and then immediately looked right back out the gap, seemingly startled by something. Jake noticed and asked him what the issue was, and Mike stuttered before saying he saw something out there. Jake wasn't really alarmed by this. They're in a town. There are people and animals and who knows what else. So he looked out the gap, and he sees absolutely nothing. There is nobody there, not even an animal. So naturally, Jake brushes it off, at least for a moment, but then his curiosity is piqued. So they go back inside, and Jake asks Mike to draw what he thinks he saw. And so he would, in detail, with just a pencil. He drew the scene. Now, he is 10, so it's not exactly the Mona Lisa, but what Jake would see would, unsettle him. The scene detailed the view from the fence, the hill, the trees, and even the partial view of the Williamson house to the right of the page. But there in the tree line, which is realistically 15 feet from the fence, you can see a silhouette. It's human-like, for the most part. But then you can tell its head is more canine, with fur, a snout, and 2 long, pointed ears. The drawing details 2 sets of teeth, one sharp pair and one human-like pair. The eyes are empty, save for a red dot in one, almost like a giant of something. Glint of something. Sorry, I misread that. Almost like a glint of something. The sun, maybe. Jake would look at the drawing, and then he would pause. This, whatever Mike saw, it's from Jake's dream. The 2 sets of teeth is the bombshell to Jake. One sharp pair, one human-like pair. It's got to be. Jake would pretend that nothing is wrong, and by the time Alan got back from work, the 2 boys went about their business, acting like nothing was wrong. But deep down, Jake was terrified, and that intensity only grew as the sun set, and he could see that tree line from his window, looking at it, afraid that a set of eyes would meet his. afraid that the thing from his nightmare would bend the bars in front of the window, afraid that he wouldn't be seen the next morning. And as he gazed into the window, he noticed a flicker of movement, and before he could even register that, something gripped onto the bars. A hand, a furry, clawed hand. And then in the darkness, all he could see is the red disc that resembled an eye. Thank you for watching. Let me know if you enjoyed this video, and if you did, it would be appreciated if you left a comment and would subscribe. I know you probably hear that all the time, but I mean, it's kind of part of the whole YouTube thing, you know. May as well say it. Part 3 will be coming out on October 31st, Halloween. So if you're excited for that, you definitely want to subscribe, you know, so you can get to see it as soon as possible. Yeah, my socials, I got an Instagram I don't really use ever, and then I got my X account, which I use way too often. So if you're interested in seeing more of my stuff, I'd suggest looking at those two. Of course, you could motivate me on the Instagram because I never use it, but on the X, I am pretty vocal on there. But without further ado, have a good day, and I'll see you later, or 5 minutes from now on X. Have a good day, everyone.